Well, my friend, the day has finally come. You and I have been asking about this for how long?
Almost a decade.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And here we have official news from Ford Australia about the 2025 Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid.
Yeah, it's not what we were expecting, but at the same time, Ford has had this technology. Hell, you even owned one.
Yes.
For a while now, and we were expecting this to go throughout the entire fleet because we knew that they were electrifying. Now we finally have it in Australia, so it's down under, but that means that it could come here.
Yes, because now the Ranger is really a global vehicle, right?
Right.
And Australians, got their Raptor Ranger. Yeah. Now we're getting our Raptor Ranger. They got the next generation Ranger first. Now we're getting it. So it works out. But you said I've owned one. But let me be clear. I just owned a regular hybrid, not a plug-in.
That's true.
Right. So my F-150 hybrid that I owned a couple of years ago was a cool truck because it was quick.
Yep.
I had onboard power. I could power things.
Yeah, what was that called?
Pro onboard
Pro onboard.
power. That's the Ford term for
Okay.
it. And now the Ranger is getting a lot of those same features, plus all electric driving mode, which is important.
Absolutely. So let's give everybody the details that we do have, and then we can go over speculation later. First of all, this vehicle is slated to go on sale in early 2025, so basically it's a year off and change.
Yes, and there's no word on the United States availability. So
None.
we want to bring you this news. Actually, I have to thank somebody
Yes, please do.
before we move on, because our friend Paul from carexpert.com.au, Paul and team, they have a huge team.
Yes, they do.
I didn't realize how big these guys are. But I was talking to him on text just recently, and because it's only coming out in Australia.
Right.
So thank you, Paul.
Thank you, mate. Yeah.
Yes, I don't do a very good Australian accent.
Yeah,
so.
when I do, people get mad at me, so I'm going to try not to do it this time. But this is for the this is overseas crowd. So this is right-hand drive. This is a vehicle that has something really interesting right here. This is actually something that Ford did way back in the day when they had dual tanks available on their full-size trucks. Is that they had two places to fill up, but one of them is for electricity and one of them is for gas.
Yes, and here's another up-close view.
There we go.
So this is the standard way to fill up a Ranger, right?
Yeah.
And according to Ford Australia, it has a 2.3-liter turbo four-cylinder.
Just like the one we have.
Yes.
Okay.
And an electric plug.
Okay, now let's talk about things that first of all, we don't know the battery size, among many other things, but we've been trying to figure out, based on what Ford currently has that we know of, what the battery size could be, and then we also decided to look at the competition, and there's only one competitor that we know of.
Yeah, as far as the United States is concerned,
Right.
And of course, electrification is happening, and I think having a hybrid technology where you can drive on electric in the city, and then when you want to go into the outback, right, or into the wilderness, you can use gasoline power, right? And it's interesting because they also have a diesel, but this is not a diesel.
That's correct. I would die to know how good this could be theoretically compared to a diesel, which really does work almost like a generator, and it's almost like ideal, but maybe it's the weight would be an issue, a whole bunch of other issues. So let's talk about the numbers that we have been able to suss out of this.
Yeah, so like I said, the engine is a 2.3. If it's the same output as here in the US, they would have 270 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque, just the engine itself.
Right.
Then the Ranger, of course, the older generation, and this one has a 10-speed automatic, and now it will most likely have an electric motor sandwiched
between the engine,
between them.
Yeah.
Once again, this is my interpretation of it, because Ford did not specify exactly.
Oh, the press release had almost nothing in it. It was a lot of fluff and very few details.
But they said you could go 45 kilometers. This is probably based on the WLTP cycle, right? Or 45 kilometers transfers to 28 miles. It converts.
WLTP, we tend to take about 10 to 20% off depending on the vehicle. And so I would say that that's probably 25 miles range, give or take. Would that be fair to say? On if we were measuring it here in the United States. However, once again, this is not a US model, so we don't know if it does come here, how it will change. But there are some other details we should go over.
Yeah, and this is very important because this has been rattling around my brain. if you add a battery, an electric motor, you're making the truck heavier, right?
Yes.
So are you losing payload and are you losing towing? And Ford says no.
Ooh.
So how did they do this? So they say this truck will still, I have a picture. It will still tow up to 3,500 kilograms, which is about 7,700 pounds.
Which is the maximum.
Which is
towing.
class leading, really,
Right.
for mid-sized trucks
Yeah.
in the U.S. So how did they do this? So my guess is that they're adding a little bit heavier spring, right, and making the payload of this truck a little bit more capable, so it can counteract the battery, right? That's
Yeah.
also in there.
Interesting. Now, once again, we don't have battery size, but okay, the competition really is in the United States only one vehicle we can kind of sort of think of, and that would be the Jeep Wrangler 4xe. Weight-wise, are probably pretty close, and we know eventually that there'll be a Gladiator 4xe of some sort, most likely using this powertrain or a similar one. So the Gladiator uses a pretty good-sized battery, right?
The Wrangler, you mean?
Yeah, sorry,
Yes.
the Wrangler.
So let's go over this. So the Wrangler 4xe is also a plug-in, and it has currently in the US a 17.3 kilowatt hour battery, which is pretty chunky.
That is pretty chunky.
When you consider the running gear of the Wrangler 4xe is the same as a regular Wrangler, so you still have solid axles, you still have the frame, you still have all those bits underneath it, which actually makes really good thing for even aftermarket people, right, who want to lift their vehicles.
You could do everything you do with a regular Jeep. You could do with this, just with the idea that this is a heavier Jeep by pretty good margin.
Yeah.
So what we're assuming is that the Ford will have a competitive battery.
Yes,
roughly.
We have another clue.
Yes, we do.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Because we can look at their Lincoln vehicles, and we did some digging. So they have the Corsair, they have the Nautilus, they have the Aviator, they have many different vehicles in the Lincoln lineup. But this one stood out to me for one reason, is because this has a 13.6 kilowatt hour battery. This is the new Aviator plug-in. And it's using a V6, so don't look at that, right?
Yeah.
Because the Ranger won't have a V6
Correct.
plug-in. But the battery, we could extrapolate something from that.
Yeah.
So that might be about the same size as a Ranger.
If you think about the fact that it's less expensive for a company to take out of their parts bin, and it cuts a little bit down on what their expenses are in terms of developing an all-new battery that's proprietary just to one vehicle. They already have one that's in existence. This could be the battery that's in there. I think it's a fair guess, but at the same time, there's no solid information on that yet. They didn't say, so.
Yeah, and the Aviator, they hide it kind of under the floor or in the floor of the vehicle opposite the fuel tank. So potentially the Ranger may have similar arrangement.
Right.
Because I know, Ford is they're sticklers. They're very strict about having the same storage, having the same payload, having the same towing. So they might be able to hide that battery. Also, the motor they use in the Lincoln is about 75 kilowatt power, which converts to about 102 horsepower.
Wow.
So if that was the case for the Ranger, woo doggies, you could have 270 plus 102, that's like 372 horsepower.
Even if they cut it back a little bit in order for, to work in gearing and everything else, it's still going to be an absolute beast.
And will make it actually very competitive to the 4xe because, that's the kind of the combined horsepower of the 4xe as well. So this is very exciting news, but there's also this.
Yeah, but this is still a hybrid,
not a plug-in. Right. So, but this comes out first. So in April-ish, springtime of 2024, the standard hybrid Tacomas are going to go on sale in the U.S. And if Australia is getting this in early 2025, I don't think we're getting it until later.
You might be right. Yeah.
We don't know. Unless they accelerate there's also a whole strike problem we have to deal with here because currently the Ranger plant is on strike.
Yep. And
in the U.S.
Now, and that's a whole different video, honestly. But the whole point is that even a one-day strike can affect things way down the line, and we are definitely going to be looking at that. But when it comes to the Ranger is currently all updated, or will be soon all updated, right? We're looking at a brand new Ranger coming in the future with 3 different powertrains that we know of here in the United States.
Yeah, and this could be the 4th.
Exactly. So let's talk about this.
Yeah, let's finish on this because this is super important. When we had our F-150 hybrid here, we've power the house with it. We welded off of it. We charged electric cars. We towed an electric car while charging it at the same time.
Which was about the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, and the whole thing just worked.
Yep.
So now the Ranger is getting something similar. They didn't specify exactly the maximum power output for the Pro Power onboard system. But if we zoom in, let me see. It says 2.3 kilowatt. I think you'll be able to see that here. So it's a 230 volt, basically 240 volt-ish system, 10 amps. So why such low current? We don't know. Will there be a higher current option in the US? But possibly. We just don't know.
Yeah, Ford did have two different options when it came to their Pro Power system that you had.
In the F-150,
right,
for sure.
In the F-150. So it's possible. It's interesting because there's so many possibilities here. First of all, it depends on the battery and whether or not this vehicle will be running and charging the battery, whether or not it can do these things. We don't know, but it certainly looks like they're advertising something very similar to what they did with the F-150 hybrid and with the F-150 Lightning, being able to power a work site. That's exactly what they're showing here.
Yes, and also, look, he's got a Barbie.
And he's sure pulling it.
It's an electric grill, I think. He's just cooking.
But yeah, but you're still cooking with the shrimp.
Okay.
You gotta add shrimp if it's Australian. That's what we're supposed to do as Americans.
Yes.
So anyway, that bed looks really small. Is that the same length as the bed that's here?
Yeah, that's supposed to be the 5-footer.
Really? It looks tiny.
Oh, wait.
Doesn't it look tiny?
Look, there looks like a little bump. Like the bed is taller than normal.
Ooh.
Wait a minute.
Oh. Whoa. We just found this out live. Well, it's kind of live, even though this is going to be...
Look, do you see this kind of slight incline?
That is...
Do you see that?
I've never seen that before. I wonder what that's for.
And this looks composite.
It does look composite.
Doesn't really look like steel or aluminum.
It looks a lot like a Toyota back there, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and that bump could be a battery.
So a couple of things.
Yeah.
A couple of things. Maybe if the battery is somehow underneath the frame, it may be protruding a little bit into the bed area.
Which would force them to lift it up and maybe make that change.
And maybe make it to save weight. See where we're going?
Oh.
Maybe composite is a little bit lighter bed than otherwise would be.
That's possible.
So
now we're spitballing about a lot of this, obviously, and this is brand new news for us. But what we want you guys to do, especially if you're in Australia, is to let us know if you have any information on this, also what your thoughts are on this vehicle, because there's so much going on here. But at the same time, there's so little information. Ford basically just said, this is coming out X time, this is what it is, and almost no details
and
on
I
top
think
of that.
that's of course on purpose because competition is fierce, right?
Yes.
If they announce every specification, every millimeter, and every how fast it charges and what the size is and all the capabilities, then Jeep could take that blueprint and work on that.
Ford,
General Motors could take
Toyota
that.
could too, because there still could very well be a Tacoma plug-in hybrid. We think it's coming.
So this is very important. So I'm assuming as close we get to 2025, we'll get more information about this, and then bam, we'll have that.
Everything we get, we'll be bringing directly to you guys.
And of course, price.
Yes.
We don't have that.
Oh, no idea.
But this is kind of a upper level wild track version trim level of the Ranger, which is not going to be cheap.
No.
I mean, there's no way this is going to be. So I'm assuming it's a premium thing. So at the higher end of their scale, right now their premium truck for off-road is Ranger Raptor in the U.S. Starts at $55K.
So what does that
How much
translate
will
an Australian Kangaroo?
I have no idea. Yeah. But if there was a plug-in Ranger, I think it could reach into $50,000 range. But you have the extra capability, my friend.
Yeah, you might have extra range too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And extra power.
And extra power.
Yeah.
So there's all those benefits. We'll see. We'll see in the near future, because I have a feeling we're going to be hearing a lot more about this truck in the very near future.
Huge news. Thanks for joining us once again. AllTFL, right? It's on your chest.
It is on my chest. AllTFL.com.
AllTFL.com is where we'll find everything automotive in one place, because we have 8 channels and 3 podcasts and I don't know how many
4 websites.
So there you go. Please go there.